Another thing I had to do while I was running the checkpoint, one day in the middle of the summer, we were closed due to heavy fighting in Fallujah. And that was the time that Zarqawi was there. And I got a random call on my field phone at the checkpoint saying, you need to take one Marine and get up to the road and stop any black Opel that comes your way. Because Zarqawi was fleeing the city in a black Opel. And all I could say was, what's an Opel? And so I got out there, and I was with my Marine. He was behind me, and I saw a black blur coming towards us, and I was like, hey, is that a black Opel? And he was like, that's a black blur, Sergeant. So I got up in the road, and I pointed my rifle down the freeway, and this was the main road going between Fallujah and Baghdad, and at this car that's going about 50 miles an hour, yelled, Kif, stop. And it whizzed right by me, and I turned around, and I was like, oh, crap, I hope I don't have to shoot out his tires. But fortunately, he stopped, and I pulled him out. You know, the other Marine was right behind me. We got there. We pulled him out of the car and said, you know, we need to search you. And, you know, they didn't tell me that I was looking for Zarqawi. So I just was like, all right, get out of the car. And he had his wife and his kids in the back seat. And, you know, I frisked him and called up and said, you know, got one PAX detained, please advise, over. And my staff sergeant came out, and he ran out there, trotted up, you know, after coming out of the air-conditioned building in the back, and he pulls out the All Zarqawi Wanted poster and looks at him and looks at the poster and goes, it's not him, let him go. And that kind of thing where, you know, we're just, you know, harassing people unnecessarily is really kind of part of daily life there. And eventually we set up a proper checkpoint, and I was relieved and went back inside. And the Marines that were there were checking almost every car that came through, and they found a couple of guys that had a bag of cash in their back seat. And they detained them on suspicion, and we're like, all right, well, we're going to detain them and interrogate them. And so they were zip cuffed and hooded. And I was told to go out and get them and pick them up, and so I picked them up in my Humvee, got the bag of cash, brought them back to the office where it was air conditioned, and sat them down, and was just keeping an eye on them. And then the interrogators got there, and they were like, why the heck are you guys being so nice to these people? And they started roughing them up and throwing their heads against the wall and, you know, preparing them for interrogation. And they dragged them out of the office, and apparently they got actually reprimanded on the outside of the office by one of our officers for engaging in that unnecessary behavior. And then they interrogated them, and they found out that there was no reason to detain them any further. And the bag of cash was about this big, which would have been a lot of American money, but in Iraqi dinars, it was only about $10,000, $15,000. And so they let him go, just like that. And I can tell you, if that money wasn't intended for the insurgency beforehand, it was after that. And there's a lot of people that get detained who are innocent. There are a lot of people that get detained who are guilty. But they go through usually similar treatment. And even at Abu Ghraib, they'll do 6 months and get out, because we obviously don't have the capacity to process them under any kind of due process. And we're really pissing a lot of people off that way. And if the game for the insurgents is you can shoot at Americans, and if you get caught, if you're not killed, you do 6 months and you get out. You know, and then, you know, not that being at Abu Ghraib is a picnic by any means, but it's kind of understood. So when I got activated 2 weeks before we deployed, and I found out that what we were going to be doing in civil affairs was exactly what the president was saying we were going to be doing on TV, in terms of working on schools and mosques and clinics and water projects and really rebuilding Iraq. And I was really excited about that. I thought we were going to be the tip of the spear, and we were going to be leading the charge to rebuild Iraq. And we were 6-man teams attached to these larger infantry units, regiments or battalions usually. And you couldn't go anywhere in the Fallujah area without 6 Humvees with machine guns, let alone mere 6 Marines. So we had to beg these infantry commanders to tag along on their convoys to do our missions. And we found ourselves constantly struggling to justify our existence to them. And we came up with a slogan: we care so that you don't have to. And to the macabre Marine Corps sense of humor, I know to a lot of the vets in the room, it's pretty funny. But it's easy to step back and think, man, we got units in Iraq whose job is to care so that someone else doesn't have to. Because that someone else isn't just those grunts that we were attached to, but it was everybody all the way up. we care so that Paul Bremer doesn't have to, so that the chiefs of staff don't have to, so that Congress doesn't have to, so that Cheney doesn't have to, as if he ever pretended to, so that the president himself can gush on and on about how much he cares about the Iraqi people while continuing a policy that is decimating their country. And we care so that the American people don't have to, so that these things can go on in our names, and can just go back to the mall and go about their daily lives and pretend like nothing's wrong. That's one of the things that disturbs me the most about the state of affairs right now. But as was made clear to me, because I took some pictures in Iraq that were used in propaganda magazines that were put out to the Iraqi people to try to convince them that we were actually doing them a lot of good. And on a small local scale, we were in civil affairs, and I was really proud of some of the work that we did in those respects. But it was clear the futility of that in the bigger picture, that a country that desperately needs rule of law more than anything will never get it with a foreign military imposing martial law. And we had our functioning democracy in America without electricity for quite a few years, and we did all right. And to say that we can't leave until certain standards of living are met is absurd. But as soon as you choose looking good over doing right, you will fail miserably at both. So we took our mission pretty seriously in civil affairs in terms of winning the hearts and minds, but by and large, that was a phrase that was more played off of than anything. And we used to say, 2 in the heart and 1 in the mind. And this was my notebook that I carried even in civil affairs, taking my mission very seriously. Last slide, please. This is my battle buddy. Can we get that back up? This is my battle buddy, Staff Sergeant Christopher Kelly, call sign Keister. He was a patriot, a great friend, a superb mentor, and an exemplary leader of Marines. He had the sense of humor to get me through all the most troubling times in our deployment, and he always had the courage to tell his Marines the truth.